The great meeting hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such fear. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their floating chairs, their different forms all showing the same emotion: terror. Ambassador Kelrin stood at the center podium, his blue scales shaking as he spoke. His voice carried across the vast chamber through translation devices that turned his words into sounds each species could understand. "Fellow council members," Kelrin began, "I bring news from the Outer Rim. Territories, the situation is worse than we feared." A massive holographic display appeared above the assembly. It showed a three-dimensional map of their galaxy. Red dots marked the systems that had fallen to the enemy. There were so many red dots that parts of the map looked like they were bleeding. 300 star systems have been lost in the past. Standard cycle. Kelrin continued. The Void Swarm continues to advance toward the core worlds. Our military forces cannot stop them. Murmurs of despair filled the chamber. Some representatives made sounds that their translators could not convert into words. These were the sounds of species facing extinction. Council leader Thara rose from her crystal throne. She was 12 feet tall and made entirely of living diamond. Her voice rang like bells when she spoke. "How many survivors escaped the latest attacks?" Thara asked. "None," Kelrin replied. "The swarm does not take prisoners. They either consume the population or convert them into more drones. Our scouts report that former colony worlds now serve as breeding grounds for more swarm units." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Void Swarm was not just an invading army. It was a force that turned their own people against them. Dr. Vex, the Council's chief scientist, activated his hover platform and floated to the speaking area. His 6 arms moved nervously as he prepared his report. "I have studied the swarm's behavior patterns," Dr. Vex said. "They learn from every battle. Their ships adapt to our weapons within hours. Their tactics evolve to counter our strategies. Traditional warfare is useless against them." "What about the Prothean archives?" asked Representative Kala from the A Centauri Confederation. "Surely our ancestors faced similar threats." Dr. Vex's large eyes blinked slowly. "I have searched the ancient records. The Protheans did encounter such entities, but only once did they successfully repel a similar invasion." "How?" Several voices called out at once. Dr. Vex hesitated. "They allied themselves with what they called the Mad Warriors from the edge of space. The records describe a species so violent and unpredictable that the swarm could not adapt to their methods." Thara leaned forward on her throne. "What happened to this warrior species? Unknown. The Protheans classified them as too dangerous for normal contact. They sealed the records and forbade future interaction with them." The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives spoke rapidly in their native languages, while translators struggled to keep up. Some argued for finding these ancient warriors, while others feared the consequences. Ambassador Kelrin raised his hands for silence. "There may be another option. Recent intelligence suggests a similar species exists in our current galaxy." The talking stopped immediately. All eyes turned to Kelrin. "Continue," Thara commanded. "The humans of the Sol system," Kelrin said. "They have been under quarantine for 2 centuries following their first contact incidents. Our military advisors classified them as a Class 12 aggressive species." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Class 12 was the highest danger rating for any spacefaring civilization. General Voss, a veteran warrior from the Rigel Defense Force, stood up. His scarred face showed disbelief. "You cannot be serious," General Voss said. "The humans are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly do against the swarm?" Dr. Vex pulled up classified files on the main display. Video footage showed human military actions from their quarantine period. The representatives watched in shocked silence. "Observe their methods," Dr. Vex said. "In this engagement, human forces were outnumbered 5-1 by galactic marines. Watch what they do." The video showed human soldiers using tactics that made seasoned warriors uncomfortable. They used their own wounded as decoys. They turned medical supplies into explosive traps. They fought with broken equipment and improvised weapons. Notice their psychological approach, Dr. Vex continued. They broadcast music during combat. They laugh while under fire. They make jokes about their own deaths. Representative Kala covered, her eyes with her tentacles. This is madness. Exactly, Dr. Vex replied, but madness that works. These humans defeated a superior force because their enemies could not predict their actions. Thara studied the files carefully. What other evidence do we have? Human history shows constant warfare among their own species, Dr. Vex explained. They have developed weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. They have strategies based on acceptable casualty rates that would horrify most civilized beings. They also show remarkable adaptation under pressure, Kelrin added. When their space colonies were attacked by void pirates, the humans did not retreat. They stripped their mining equipment and turned it into weapons. They use cargo ships as battering rams. General Voss shook his head. Even if they are effective fighters, their technology is too primitive. They cannot match swarm firepower. But they might not need to, Dr. Vex said. My analysis suggests the swarm's adaptation protocols are based on rational military behavior. They expect enemies to value preservation of life and resources. Humans appear to value victory above everything else. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued that allying with such a dangerous species was worse than facing the swarm. Others pointed out that conventional methods had already failed. Finally, Thara called for order. The situation is clear. Our current military forces cannot stop the Void Swarm. Traditional tactics have failed. We need something the Swarm has never encountered. The humans are contained for good reason, warned Dr. Vex. Lifting their quarantine could have consequences we cannot predict. The consequences of doing nothing are certain extinction, Thara replied. I call for a vote. Should we offer the humans an alliance against the Void Swarm? The voting took place in silence. Each representative entered their decision into their personal console. The results appeared on the main display. The measure passed by a narrow margin, 51% in favor, 49% against. Thara stood from her throne. The decision is made. Ambassador Kelrin will lead a diplomatic mission to the Sol system. The quarantine of Earth will be lifted temporarily. What do we offer them in exchange for their help? Kelrin asked. Full council membership, Thara announced. Access to our technology and trade networks. Recognition as a sovereign. Galactic power. And if they refuse, Thara's crystal form seemed to dim with worry. Then we face the swarm alone, and our civilization ends. As the assembly dispersed, many representatives wondered if they had just made their salvation possible or sealed their doom by unleashing humanity upon the galaxy. Either way, they would soon discover why the humans had been quarantined in the first place. The fate of the galaxy now rested with the most dangerous species in known space. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the alien fleet emerge from hyperspace. The ships appeared like ghosts, materializing from empty space, their hulls gleaming silver in the light of distant stars. Sir, we count 47 vessels, reported Lieutenant Sarah Chen from the communications station. They're broadcasting on all frequencies requesting permission to approach. Jake nodded slowly. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like these ships. They were massive, easily 10 times larger than Earth's biggest cruisers. Their designs were elegant and curved, unlike the angular, weapon-heavy appearance of human warships. Open a channel, Jake ordered. Let's see what they want. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of an alien creature. It had blue, scales, large golden eyes, and spoke in a musical voice that the translation computer turned into English words. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the alien said. "I am Ambassador Kelrun of the Altarian Federation. We represent the Galactic Council and request permission to send a diplomatic party to your world." Jake exchanged glances with his staff. The Galactic Council had placed Earth under quarantine 200 years ago. No alien ship had entered the Sol system since then. "Permission granted," Jake replied carefully. "But you will be escorted by our defense fleet." Within hours, General Lisa Hayes arrived at Luna Station aboard the flagship Defiance. She brought with her the best military minds Earth could offer: Colonel Tom Bradley, the architect of the Mars Defense Campaign; Major Rachel Stone, who had led the successful counterattack against Void pirates in the asteroid belt; Dr. Emily Carter, Earth's leading expert on alien biology. The alien shuttle that docked with Luna Station was a work of art. Its hull seemed to flow like liquid metal, and it made no sound as it moved through space. When the airlock opened, 5 aliens stepped through, moving with careful, measured steps. Ambassador Kelrun was even more impressive in person. He stood 7 feet tall, with scales that shifted color in the station's artificial light. Behind him came 4 other aliens of different species, each more unusual than the last. "Welcome to Luna Station," General Hayes said, extending her hand in greeting. Kelrun stared at the offered hand for a moment, then carefully reached out with one clawed finger to touch it. The gesture lasted barely a second before he pulled back. "Appreciate your hospitality," Kelrun said. "However, we must discuss urgent matters that affect the survival of all galactic civilizations." General Hayes led them to the station's main briefing room. The aliens moved slowly, as if they expected danger from every corner. Their eyes constantly scanned the corridors, taking in details of human military equipment and personnel. "You seem nervous," Colonel Bradley observed as they walked. "Your species has a reputation for unpredictable behavior," one of the other aliens replied. This one looked like a walking crystal formation. "We are taking appropriate precautions." Dr. Carter raised an eyebrow. "What kind of reputation?" "Perhaps we should discuss that after we explain our situation," Kelrun said quickly. In the briefing room, the aliens activated a holographic projector. The device was far beyond human technology, creating 3-dimensional images that looked completely real. "This is the Void Swarm," Kelrun began, showing creatures that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. "They have consumed over 300 star systems in the past year." The images showed battles between alien fleets and the swarm. The human observers watched in silence as advanced civilizations were overwhelmed by endless waves of dark, insect-like ships. "Our conventional forces cannot stop them," Kelrun continued. "The swarm adapts to our tactics within hours. They learn from every engagement and become stronger." General Hayes leaned forward. "Why are you telling us this? Earth has been quarantined for 2 centuries. "Because," Kelrun said hesitantly, "we believe humans might be able to fight them effectively." The room fell silent. Finally, Major Stone spoke up. "You want our help? Our technology is primitive compared to yours. We barely have faster-than-light travel." Dr. Carter pulled out a tablet and began accessing classified files. "Actually, we might have more experience with these creatures than you think?" She showed images from human exploration missions beyond the solar system. Similar entities had been encountered during deep space surveys, though in much smaller numbers. "We called them shadow bugs," Dr. Carter explained. "We lost 3 research stations to them before we figured out how to fight back." The aliens looked surprised. Kelrun's scales shifted to a darker blue color. "You have encountered swarm entities before?" he asked. "Small groups, nothing like what you're showing us," Colonel Bradley replied. "But we developed some effective countermeasures." Dr. Carter activated her own holographic display, showing human military footage. The aliens watched with growing discomfort as human forces used tactics that seemed chaotic and brutal. "Notice how we don't follow standard engagement patterns," she explained. "We used mining explosives as weapons. We rammed cargo ships into Their formations. We set traps using our own equipment as bait. One of the aliens, a creature that looked like a large insect, made clicking sounds that the translator rendered as distress. This behavior is highly irregular, the insect alien said. No civilized species would accept such casualty rates. Captain Ryan Davis, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. Casualty rates don't matter if you win the war. The aliens exchanged nervous glances. Kelrin cleared his throat. This brings us to why we lifted your quarantine. Human military methods are unique among galactic civilizations. Unique how? General Hayes asked. You fight wars to win them, Kelrin replied. Most species fight wars to minimize losses. The difference is significant. Dr. Carter pulled up. Historical human conflicts on her tablet. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to be more dangerous than your enemy. The crystal alien spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Your species was quarantined because you scared our military advisors. Human prisoners of war would sing songs during interrogation. You made weapons out of eating utensils. You turned medical supplies into explosive devices. Standard improvisation techniques, Captain Davis said casually. When you're outnumbered and outgunned, you use what you have. But you also laugh during combat, the insect alien clicked nervously. Our psychological experts cannot understand how any species maintains humor while facing death. Major Stone shrugged. Keeps morale up. Fear makes you stupid. Kelrin activated. Another hologram showing swarm tactical patterns. The swarm's adaptation algorithms are based on rational military behavior. They expect enemies to preserve resources and minimize casualties. They cannot predict irrational tactics. General Hayes studied the data carefully. You're saying our irrationality might be an advantage. Precisely, Kelrin replied. We offer you full membership in the Galactic Council, access to our technology, and recognition as a sovereign galactic power. In exchange, we ask for your assistance against the Void Swarm. The human delegation looked at each other. After 2 centuries of isolation, they were being offered everything they had dreamed of. What's the catch? Colonel Bradley asked suspiciously. No catch, Kelrin said. But you should know that once you accept, there will be no quarantine to protect the galaxy from humanity again. Captain Davis grinned. Are you saying you're more afraid of us than the swarm? The aliens remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Kelrin answered honestly. We hope you prove to be the lesser of 2 evils. General Hayes stood up. We accept your offer. When do we start? The human fleet arrived at Kepler Station like a pack of hunting wolves. Their ships were ugly compared to the sleek alien vessels already docked at the massive space station. Where alien ships curved gracefully through space, human warships bristled with weapons and armor plating. Major Susan Clark stepped off the transport shuttle and immediately noticed how the alien personnel moved away from her group. Their reactions ranged from curiosity to barely hidden fear. Some species she had never seen before quickly left the docking bay when the humans appeared. Welcome to Kepler Station, said Commander Vex, the same alien scientist who had briefed the Galactic Council. We have prepared quarters for your forces and scheduled integration training with our military units. Susan looked around the enormous docking bay. The station was 10 times larger than anything humans had built. Its technology was centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities, but the alien workers moved with careful, precise motions that seemed inefficient to her military mind. How long do we have before the swarm gets here? She asked. Our estimates suggest 3 standard months before they reach this sector, Commander Vex replied. That should give us sufficient time to coordinate our forces. 3 months, Susan repeated. We'll be ready in 1. The first training session took place in the station's main simulator bay. Susan watched as alien military units practiced their standard combat drills. They moved in perfect formation, used their weapons efficiently, and followed detailed tactical plans. "Very impressive," she told Commander Zeta, a tall alien with 4 arms who led the station's defense forces. "But what happens when the plan doesn't work?" "We develop a new plan," Commander Zeta replied. "Our tactical computers can calculate thousands of possibilities and select the optimal strategy." Susan nodded. "Show me what you do when your computers are destroyed." Commander Zeta looked confused. "Why would our computers be destroyed?" "Because that's what the enemy will target first," Susan explained. "Any competent force tries to blind you before they attack." The next day, human forces demonstrated their own combat techniques. The aliens watched nervously as human soldiers practiced close quarters fighting with knives, clubs, and improvised weapons. Captain Mike Torres led a squad through an urban combat simulation. Instead of following the planned route, his men blew holes through walls, set buildings on fire to create smoke cover, and used destroyed vehicles as weapons. "This is highly inefficient," Commander Zeta observed. "You are destroying valuable infrastructure." "Infrastructure doesn't matter if you're dead," Torres replied. "Better to own a pile of rubble than let the enemy have a functional city." The alien officers took detailed notes, but clearly didn't understand the human approach to warfare. They seemed especially disturbed by humanity's willingness to accept heavy casualties for minor tactical advantages. Lieutenant Commander David Ross arrived with the first human fighter squadron 3 weeks later. His pilots immediately began modifying their ships, adding extra weapons and removing safety systems that they considered unnecessary. "These modifications violate galactic safety standards," protested the station's chief engineer, a crystalline, being named Crix. "Safety standards get you killed in combat," Ross replied, welding an additional missile launcher to his fighter's wing. "We'd rather have ships that can fight than ships that are safe." The aliens watched in horror as human technicians stripped the emergency escape pods from their fighters to make room for more ammunition. When Crix asked why, the humans explained that they didn't plan to retreat anyway. Vice Admiral James Parker took command of the combined human-alien fleet operations. His first order shocked the alien commanders. He wanted to patrol closer to swarm territory. "Our current position is too defensive," Parker explained during the strategy briefing. "We need to find the enemy and hit them before they're ready." "But that increases our risk of casualties," argued Admiral Thex, a senior alien fleet commander. "Standard doctrine calls for defensive positions with overlapping fields of fire." "Standard doctrine is why you've been losing," Parker replied, bluntly. "The swarm expects you to sit back and wait for them. Let's do something they won't expect." The first joint patrol launched 2 days later. Lieutenant Commander Ross led a mixed squadron of human and alien fighters toward the edge of swarm space. The alien pilots followed human tactics reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable with the aggressive approach. They found the swarm scouting force near a dead star system that had been stripped of all life. 6 large bioships moved slowly through the debris field, collecting resources and probably analyzing the area for future attacks. "Standard procedure would be to observe and report," said Flight Leader Kess, the senior alien pilot. "We are outnumbered 2-1. Ross studied the enemy formation on his scanner. The swarm ships were bigger than anything in their squadron, and their dark hulls showed signs of heavy weapons and armor. "Standard procedure is why they keep winning," Ross replied. "All fighters, attack formation. We're going in." "This is madness," Kess protested. "We should call for reinforcements." "No time," Ross said, already accelerating toward the enemy. "If we let them finish their survey, they'll bring a whole fleet next time." The human fighters charged straight at the swarm formation, ignoring the deadly energy beams that reached out to destroy them. Ross's wingman, Lieutenant Jenny Walsh, laughed over the communication channel as her fighter took hits from enemy fire. "Come on, you ugly bugs," she shouted. "Let's dance." The alien pilots followed reluctantly, trying to maintain formation while the humans scattered in all directions. They watched in amazement as human fighters deliberately rammed into swarm vessels, using their own ships as weapons. Ross guided his damaged fighter on a collision course with the largest enemy ship. His engines were failing, and his weapons were offline, but he still had momentum and a full fuel tank. "This is Ross to all fighters," he broadcast. "Sometimes the ship is the weapon." His fighter struck the swarm command vessel at full speed, creating an explosion that lit up the entire system. The blast destroyed 3 more enemy ships and crippled the remaining ones. The surviving human fighters finished off the damaged swarm vessels, while the alien pilots watched in stunned silence. Of the 12 human fighters that began the attack, only 4 remained functional. "Mission accomplished," Ross's replacement, Lieutenant Tom Baker, reported calmly. "Enemy scouting force eliminated, returning to base." Back at Kepler Station, the alien commanders struggled to process what they had witnessed. The humans had destroyed a superior enemy force, but lost 67% of their own squadron in the process. "How do you consider this a victory?" Commander Zeta asked Major Clark during the debriefing. "Your losses were unacceptable." "Our losses were acceptable because we completed the mission," Clark replied. "More importantly, we learned something valuable about the swarm." Dr. Michael Torres had analyzed the wreckage recovered from the battle. His findings changed everything the aliens thought they knew about fighting the Void Swarm. "The swarm's adaptive systems couldn't handle our attack patterns," Torres explained. "Their computers kept trying to predict rational behavior. When our fighters started ramming their ships, their defensive algorithms failed completely." The alien officers looked at the data with growing excitement. For the first time since the war began, someone had found a weakness in the swarm's defenses. "The enemy adapts to logical tactics," Torres continued, "but they can't adapt to crazy ones. Every time we do something no sane military force would do, we create an opening." Commander Vex studied the battle recordings carefully. "Your species fights in ways that violate every principle of civilized warfare." Major Clark smiled grimly. "Lucky for you, the swarm isn't civilized either." The Battle of Proxima Centauri began at dawn, ship time. Admiral Robert Chen stood on the bridge of the human flagship Vengeance, watching the largest swarm fleet anyone had ever seen emerge from hyperspace. The enemy formation stretched across, space like a dark cloud, blocking out the stars. "Enemy count is over 2,000 vessels," reported Commander Lisa Park from the sensor station. "They're moving in a standard attack formation." Chen nodded grimly. The combined human-alien fleet had only 800 ships, but they had something the swarm didn't expect. 3 months of training had taught the aliens some human tactics, while humans had learned to use alien technology more effectively. "Signal, all ships," Chen ordered. "Execute Plan Chaos." Plan Chaos was a human invention that horrified alien commanders. Instead of maintaining formation and fighting a defensive battle, the entire fleet would scatter and attack from random directions. No computer could predict where the next attack would come from. The alien ships hesitated for a moment, then followed the human vessels as they broke formation and charged into the enemy fleet. Admiral Thex, commanding the alien contingent, had argued against this plan for weeks. "This violates every principle of fleet combat," Thex had said during planning sessions. "Good," Chen had replied. "That's the point." Now, watching human destroyers ram straight into swarm capital ships, while alien cruisers provided covering fire, Thex was beginning to understand human strategy. Colonel Jennifer Walsh led the first boarding action against a swarm hive ship. Her Marines had trained for this moment, practicing in mock-ups of enemy vessels, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality of fighting inside a living ship. The swarm vessel's corridors pulsed with organic life. The walls bled when damaged, and the floor moved under their feet like breathing skin. Swarm drones emerged. From hidden passages, their black carapaces gleaming in the dim light. "Flamethrowers up front," Walsh ordered, pulling the pin from an incendiary grenade. "Burn everything that moves." The human Marines advanced through the ship's intestine-like corridors, using weapons that would have been banned in civilized warfare. Flamethrowers, acid sprayers, and explosive charges designed to cause maximum destruction. The swarm drones had been programmed to fight soldiers using energy weapons and following standard military protocols. They had no defense against humans who fought like they were trying to exterminate an infestation of insects. Second squad, plant charges in that breeding chamber, Walsh commanded, pointing to a room filled with swarm eggs. Third squad, find the ship's brain and fry it. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez kicked down a door and tossed white phosphorus grenades into a room full of swarm technical equipment. The chemicals burned through everything they touched, creating clouds of toxic smoke that forced the defenders to retreat. "These things don't like fire," Rodriguez reported over the radio. "Recommend switching to incendiary weapons for all boarding actions." Meanwhile, in space, Captain William Foster's destroyer squadron was executing the most dangerous part of Plan Chaos. His 5 ships had been stripped of unnecessary equipment and loaded with extra reactor cores. "All ships, prepare for final approach," Foster broadcast to his squadron. "Remember, we only get one shot at this." The swarm command vessel was a massive bioship, larger than most space stations. It coordinated the entire enemy fleet through psychic links and quantum communications. Destroying it would throw the swarm formation into chaos. Foster's destroyers approached the command ship from different angles, weaving between enemy fire and using destroyed vessels as cover. The swarm defenses focused on the largest threats, ignoring what they saw as a minor attack by obsolete human ships. "Now," Foster ordered. All 5 destroyers fired their engines at maximum power, accelerating directly toward the command vessel. The swarm finally realized what was happening, but it was too late to stop ships that were already committed to collision courses. Foster watched the enemy ship grow larger on his screen. His crew had evacuated to escape pods minutes earlier, but Foster remained at his post to ensure the ship stayed on target. "This is Foster to all ships," he broadcast. "Tell them back home that we made it count." The destroyers struck the swarm command vessel simultaneously, their reactor cores detonating in a chain reaction that lit up the entire system. The explosion was visible from planets in neighboring star systems, and the shock wave disabled hundreds of nearby swarm vessels. The loss of their command ship threw the swarm fleet into confusion. Drones that had been fighting with perfect coordination suddenly began attacking randomly. Some ships retreated while others continued fighting, creating gaps in their formation that human and alien forces exploited ruthlessly. On the surface of New Geneva Colony, Sergeant First Class Karen Miller was leading the ground assault to retake the planet. The swarm had occupied the colony for 6 months, turning its cities into breeding grounds for more drones. Miller's unit moved through the ruins of downtown New Geneva like ghosts. They had painted their faces with mud and ash, making them look more like savages than soldiers. The swarm drones were programmed to recognize military uniforms and equipment, not painted warriors carrying improvised weapons. "Remember, we're not here to recapture the city," Miller whispered to her squad. "We're here to make the bugs pay for taking it." The humans had learned urban warfare during centuries of fighting each other in Earth's cities. They knew how to use sewers, abandoned buildings, and civilian infrastructure as weapons. The swarm drones had never faced an enemy that turned an entire city into a battlefield. Miller's team planted explosive charges in the colony's power plant, then retreated to watch the fireworks. When the plant exploded, it took out 6 city blocks and eliminated a major swarm breeding facility. "That's for the colonists," Miller said quietly, thinking of the families who had died when the swarm first attacked. Other human units used similar tactics throughout the colony. They poisoned water supplies that the swarm was using for their bioships. They rigged buildings to collapse when drones entered them. They even used the colony's automated systems against their occupiers, turning traffic control computers into weapons. The swarm had conquered hundreds of worlds using standard invasion tactics. They had never faced defenders who were willing to destroy their own cities rather than let the enemy have them intact. By the end of the day, New Geneva was a smoking ruin, but it was free of swarm infestation. The human survivors emerged from their hiding places to find their city destroyed but their world liberated. Was it worth it? Asked Dr. Patricia Wong, the colony's chief medical officer, looking at the devastation. Ask me again when the swarm is extinct, Miller replied. The Battle of Proxima Centauri marked the first major victory against the Void Swarm. For the first time since the war began, an alien species had not only stopped a swarm advance, but completely destroyed an entire enemy fleet. The news spread quickly through the galaxy. Species that had been preparing for extinction suddenly had hope. The humans had proven that the swarm could be defeated, but only by fighting a kind of war that civilized species had never imagined. Admiral Chen stood in the wreckage of the swarm command ship, watching human salvage teams collect enemy technology for analysis. The aliens had given humanity advanced weapons and ships, but humans had given them something more valuable. They had shown the galaxy how to win by being willing to lose everything. General Patricia Moore studied the holographic map in the war room, her weathered face showing the strain of 6 months of continuous fighting. Red lines marked swarm territory, while blue indicated Allied control. Despite their victories, the enemy still held nearly half the galaxy. Intelligence reports confirm it, said Dr. Alex Rivera, the head of xenobiology research. The Nexus exists. It's the central brain controlling every swarm unit in the galaxy. The alien commanders around the table shifted nervously. Commander Vex, who had become the primary liaison between human and alien forces, activated a new holographic display. The Nexus is located in a pocket dimension, Vex explained. It can only be reached through portal gates scattered across swarm territory. Our scouts have identified 12 active portals. Admiral Chen leaned forward, studying the tactical data. How heavily defended are these portals? Each portal is protected by at least 50 capital ships and thousands of support vessels, replied Admiral Thex. Conventional assault would require our entire fleet to take even one portal. General Moore smiled grimly. Good thing we don't do conventional assaults. She activated her own display, showing a plan that made even the human officers look concerned. Operation Wildfire called for simultaneous attacks on all 12 portals, while a small team infiltrated the Nexus itself. This is suicide, protested Commander Zeta. You're dividing our forces against superior numbers at every location. That's the idea, Moore replied. The swarm expects us to concentrate our forces for maximum effectiveness. They won't expect us to attack everywhere at once with inadequate numbers. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Brooks stepped forward. He commanded the elite Terra Nova Rangers, humanity's most dangerous special forces unit. His men had volunteered for the infiltration mission knowing they wouldn't return. My team can handle the Nexus insertion, Brooks said, but we'll need a distraction big enough to draw swarm attention away from the portal we use. You'll have it, Admiral Chen promised. Every ship in the fleet will be shooting at something. The preparation took 3 weeks. Human engineers worked around the clock to modify ships for the mission. They removed safety systems, overloaded weapons, and installed experimental devices that alien scientists considered far too dangerous for practical use. Staff Sergeant Angela Rivera, the Rangers' demolitions expert, personally supervised the creation of the antimatter charges that would destroy the Nexus. Each bomb was powerful enough to crack a moon, but they needed to be small enough for a human to carry. These things are incredibly unstable, warned Dr. Kim Martinez, the team's physicist. One wrong move and you'll vaporize half the Nexus before you reach the core. Good, Rivera replied, carefully adjusting the detonation mechanism. Maybe we'll get lucky and take out some extra swarm hardware. Master Sergeant Daniel Clark, the team's combat engineer, studied blueprints of swarm architecture that had been captured during previous battles. The Nexus would be unlike anything they had encountered before. The entire structure is alive, Clark explained to his squad. The walls can move, passages conceal themselves, and the floor might try to digest us. Standard infiltration techniques won't work. So we make new techniques, Brooks said simply. Rangers adapt. The assault began at 0300 hours Galactic Standard Time. Across 12 star systems, human and alien fleets emerged from hyperspace and immediately engaged swarm portal defenses. Admiral Michelle Thompson commanded the largest attack force at Portal Prime, the most heavily defended gateway. Her fleet consisted of 200 ships, facing over 300 swarm vessels in fortified positions. "All ships, execute attack pattern insanity," Thompson ordered. Attack pattern insanity was purely human invention. Instead of maintaining formation and concentrating firepower, every ship attacked independently, targeting whatever enemy vessel was closest. The pattern created chaos that swarm tactical computers couldn't analyze or counter. Human destroyers rammed swarm cruisers while alien fighters strafed enemy formations from unexpected angles. The battle turned into a massive brawl with no clear front lines and no predictable movement patterns. Captain Sandra Hayes piloted her fighter through the wreckage of destroyed ships, using debris as cover while hunting for high-value targets. Her squadron had already lost half its members, but they had crippled 2 swarm capital ships. "This is Hayes to all fighters," she broadcast. "The portal is opening. Time to crash the party." Meanwhile, Brooks and his Rangers approached Portal, 7 in a stolen swarm transport. The ship's biomechanical systems made his skin crawl, but it was the only way to get close to the portal without being detected. "Sensors show massive space battle at Portal Prime," reported Corporal James Murphy, the team's communications specialist. "Thompson's really giving them hell." "Good," Brooks replied. "That should keep their attention off us." The portal itself was a swirling vortex of energy surrounded by massive swarm bioships. It led to the pocket dimension where the Nexus waited, hidden from normal space and protected by layers of exotic matter. "Remember the mission," Brooks told his team as they approached the portal. "Get in, plant the charges, get out, simple." "Since when is anything we do simple?" Rivera asked, checking her explosives one final time. Their transport passed through the portal's event horizon, and reality twisted around them. Colors that had no names flashed through the ship's hull, and gravity seemed to change direction, randomly. After what felt like hours but registered as seconds on their chronometers, they emerged in the pocket dimension. The Nexus floated before them like a nightmare made real. It was part space station, part living creature, and part something that human minds weren't designed to understand. Organic towers spiraled upward from a central core that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. "That's our target," Brooks said, pointing to the core. "The heart of every swarm unit in the galaxy is in there." As they approached the Nexus, Clark detected something that changed everything. The structure wasn't just a command center, it was a judge and jury, evaluating species across the galaxy and marking them for extinction. "Sir, you need to see this," Clark said, showing Brooks the data streaming from the Nexus. "The swarm isn't just an invasion force, it's a cosmic cleanser, programmed to eliminate species that are too aggressive to coexist with others." Brooks stared at the information in horror. "You mean we're their primary target because we're too dangerous?" "That's exactly what I mean," Clark replied. "Humanity was marked for total extinction the moment we left our solar system. The Rangers infiltrated the Nexus through a maintenance shaft that Clark had identified using stolen swarm technical manuals. The interior was even worse than the exterior, with corridors that moved like intestines and walls that seemed to watch them with invisible eyes. Rivera planted the first antimatter charge in a chamber filled with organic computers that processed information from across the galaxy. The swarm's collective intelligence flowed through these bioprocessors like blood through arteries. "Charge 1 in position," she reported. "Moving to secondary target." They fought their way deeper into the structure, encountering swarm defenders that were unlike anything they had faced before. These weren't simple drones, but specialized guardians designed to protect the Nexus core. Clark held a doorway while Rivera planted the second charge, using his combat engineering skills to turn corridor intersections into kill zones. His improvised Explosives and jury-rigged weapons gave them an edge against enemies that expected conventional military hardware. 2 minutes to core penetration, Brooks reported over the radio. All teams report status. The responses came back from the portal. Attacks happening across the galaxy. Some teams had succeeded in their diversionary missions, while others had been completely destroyed. But the plan was working. The swarm's attention was divided across 12 different battles. Finally, they reached the Nexus core. It was a vast chamber filled with a brain-like structure that pulsed with dark energy. This was the source of every swarm attack, every conquered world, every extinct civilization. Final charge placement, Rivera announced, setting the largest antimatter device at the base of the central brain. 30 seconds to detonation. But as they tried to escape, the Nexus began adapting to human tactics in real time. Passages sealed themselves, gravity reversed, and the very structure of the facility changed to trap them inside. It's learning, Brooks realized. The damn thing is learning from our attack patterns. Rivera looked at the detonation timer. 20 seconds. We're not getting out of here. Brooks made the hardest decision of his military career. Then we make sure it counts. Murphy, broadcast our final report. Command needs to know what we found. As the antimatter charges exploded, the Nexus core collapsed into itself, taking with it the collective intelligence that had controlled trillions of swarm units across the galaxy. The pocket dimension began unraveling, pulling everything inside toward a quantum singularity. The Ranger's final transmission reached Admiral Thompson just as Portal Prime exploded in a cascade of energy that lit up 3 star systems. Brooks had succeeded, but the cost was everything. The destruction of the Nexus sent shockwaves through the swarm network that reached every corner of the galaxy. On battlefields across hundreds of star systems, swarm units suddenly stopped their coordinated attacks and began fighting like confused animals. But the dying hive mind had one final card to play. Every remaining swarm unit in the galaxy received a single overwhelming command: destroy Earth at any cost. Admiral Richard Stone stood on the bridge of the battleship Freedom, watching the largest enemy fleet in history emerge from hyperspace, at the edge of the Sol system. 3,000 swarm vessels, all that remained of their once mighty invasion force, had come to eliminate humanity's homeworld. All stations report ready, announced Captain Nicole Evans from the command deck. Every ship in the system is armed and prepared for battle. Earth's home defense fleet consisted of barely 800 vessels, including converted cargo ships, mining platforms, and civilian transports that had been hastily armed with whatever weapons could be found. It was the most desperate battle in human history. Signal all ships, Stone ordered. This is our home. Nobody gets past us. The battle began with the swarm fleet launching every fighter and drone they possessed. Millions of small craft swarmed toward Earth like angry insects, their dark hulls blotting out the stars. Commander Jake Morrison, now commanding the Luna defense grid, fired every weapon platform simultaneously. The ancient orbital fortresses had been built during humanity's early expansion into space, but they had been continuously upgraded with the best technology available. All lunar batteries, continuous fire, Morrison commanded. Don't stop shooting until we run out of targets or ammunition. The space around Earth erupted in a light show of energy beams, missile explosions, and nuclear detonations. Human fighters, led by Captain Ryan Davis, engaged the swarm drones in close combat, using tactics that prioritized destroying as many enemies as possible rather than preserving their own lives. Remember, every bug we kill here is one that won't reach Earth, Davis broadcast to his squadron. Make every shot count. The human pilots fought with desperate courage, ramming damaged fighters into enemy formations and using their ships as guided missiles when their weapons failed. Davis himself led 3 consecutive kamikaze attacks, somehow surviving each one through skill and impossible luck. On the surface of Earth, General Lisa Hayes coordinated the planet's ground defenses. Every major city had been fortified, and the civilian population had been evacuated to underground shelters that had been designed to survive nuclear war. If any swarm units reach the surface, we fight them in the streets, Hayes announced to her commanders. This is humanity's last stand. We don't give them anything. Major Susan Clark commanded the defenses of New York City, which had been turned into a fortress over the past 6 months. Skyscrapers had been converted into weapons. Platforms and the subway system had been rigged with enough explosives to level half the city. Orders are simple, Clark told her troops. If we can't hold the city, we blow it up. The swarm gets nothing but rubble. In space, the battle reached its climax as the swarm flagship, a bioship the size of a small moon, pushed through the human defense lines toward Earth. Its massive bulk shrugged off attacks that would have destroyed lesser vessels. Captain Evans piloted her crippled cruiser Defiance on an intercept course with the enemy flagship. Her ship had lost engines, weapons, and life support, but she still had momentum and the largest nuclear warhead in the human arsenal. "This is Evans to all ships," she broadcast calmly. "I'm going to light up their day." Her cruiser struck the swarm flagship's forward section at ramming speed, and the nuclear warhead detonated inside the enemy vessel's biostructure. The explosion created a second sun in Earth's sky, visible even through the planet's atmosphere. The destruction of their flagship broke the final swarm assault. The remaining enemy vessels, now fighting without coordination or central command, were systematically hunted down by the surviving human forces. Admiral Stone watched the last swarm ship explode in a burst of green fire. The Sol system was littered with wreckage from both fleets, and Earth's orbital infrastructure had been devastated. But humanity had survived. "Signal all stations," Stone announced. "Stand down from general quarters. The battle is over." The victory had come at an enormous cost. Earth's defense fleet had been reduced to fewer than 200 operational vessels. 3 of the planet's major cities had been destroyed by swarm bombardment. Millions of humans had died in the fighting. But across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. The Void Swarm was extinct. Every single one of their vessels had been destroyed, their hive mind eliminated, and their threat to galactic civilization ended forever. Ambassador Sarah Bennett, one of the few surviving human diplomats, addressed the reformed Galactic Council 3 months after the final battle. The Great Chamber was half empty, representing the civilizations that had been destroyed during the war. "The swarm is gone," Bennett announced, "but the cost of victory has been higher than any of us imagined." The statistics were sobering. Over 400 star systems had been completely sterilized. Entire species had been wiped out. Billions of beings had died in the fighting, and countless more had lost their homes and families. "Humanity accepts responsibility for our role in this war," Bennett continued. "We fought the way we had to fight, but we understand that our methods disturbed many of you." Council Leader Thara, her crystal form now showing stress fractures from the war, spoke for the surviving civilizations. "Your methods saved us all," Thara said simply. "We asked you to be dangerous, and you delivered exactly what we needed." The Galactic Council formally recognized humanity as the galaxy's primary military force, a role that came with both tremendous respect and lingering fear from other species. Human colonies began spreading across the former swarm territories, bringing with them Earth's unique approach to frontier life. Dr. Emily Carter, now serving as Earth's chief science advisor, worked with alien researchers to study the ruins of swarm technology. They were determined to understand how such a threat had emerged and how to prevent it from happening again. "The swarm was created by a civilization that feared aggressive species," Carter explained to the joint research team. "They built the perfect weapon to eliminate dangerous life forms, but they never considered that sometimes dangerous is exactly what you need." General Patricia Moore, promoted to Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces, established training centers where human tactics were taught to alien military personnel. The lessons were difficult for many species to accept, but they were necessary. "We're not trying to make you fight like humans," Moore explained to a class of alien officers. "We're trying to teach you to think like humans when you have no other choice." The galaxy slowly began to rebuild. New trade routes opened between surviving civilizations. Refugee populations were relocated to safe worlds. Technology was shared more freely as species worked together to recover from the devastation. But everyone understood that the galaxy had changed forever. The old rules of civilized warfare had been proven inadequate against existential threats. Sometimes, survival required becoming as dangerous as your enemies. Captain Ryan Davis, one of the few fighter pilots to survive the entire war, established a memorial on Luna for all the humans who had died fighting the swarm. The simple stone monument bore an inscription that captured humanity's contribution to galactic history. They came from a world where everything tried to kill them, so they learned to kill everything back. When the galaxy needed monsters to fight monsters, humanity answered the call. As Earth's sun set over the memorial, Davis reflected on what they had accomplished. Humanity had gained everything they had ever dreamed of: membership in the galactic community, access to advanced technology, and recognition as a major power. But they had also gained something they never wanted: a reputation as the species other, civilizations called when they needed someone eliminated. The galaxy was safe, but it now knew the true price of turning to the most dangerous species in existence when all seemed lost. Sometimes the cure was worse than the disease, but sometimes it was the only thing that worked. Humanity had proven that when faced with extinction, there was no limit to what they would do to survive. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget, and a responsibility humanity would carry for the rest of their existence among the stars. The war was over, but the legend of human warfare had only just begun.